military fighting a massive invasion. Total devastation.
Three earthquakes rocked western Iran, killing at least 2 people and hurting more than 200 others. A 6.1 magnitude quake struck early this morning after 2 smaller earthquakes hit that very same area. Now, just last November, a major 7.3 magnitude quake hit the same region, killing over 530 people and injuring thousands.
All right, got to talk more about this story that we just brought to you before the break here. The U.S. Geological Survey reporting a big earthquake, a magnitude now 6.3 earthquake, hitting off the coast of Oregon. Now, it happened about 185 miles west of Bandon, Oregon. That is right on the Pacific Ocean, so this was an offshore quake. No immediate tsunami warning has been posted yet. We will continue to follow this story and bring you any developments as we get them. A 6.3 magnitude quake off the coast of Oregon just minutes ago.
Fear continues on the Indonesian island of Lombok as earthquakes continue to cause tremors and landslides. This island has been dealing with earthquake after earthquake after earthquake, and this has been going on, get this, for the last 3 weeks. You may remember the biggest quake. This was a 6.9 magnitude quake, and that one happened on August 5th, and that was the one that really made worldwide headlines because it unfortunately killed more than 460 people, and that was just in that one event alone. A lot of people lost their lives in the landslides that followed. Some of the most recent quakes that we saw over the weekend on Sunday included quakes that ranged from 5.5 magnitude all the way up to another 6.9. So we heard about minor damage, minor injuries reported from these, but there's just been so much aftershock activity that the data being collected on all the impacts from these quakes is ongoing. Think about it, thousands of people have been displaced, and as expected, there's panic every time somebody feels movement or hears a large bang. So you can understand why people start running into the street.
Measuring 7.3, so significant. It has rocked Venezuela. Local 10 News reporter Amy Viteri is live in the newsroom with more on this. Amy.
Well, Lori, that powerful earthquake causing people to actually evacuate buildings in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas, although according to the U.S. Geological Survey, they're estimating that the epicenter of this quake was actually about 13 miles southwest of Irapa, Venezuela. That quake, though, felt as far away as Colombia's capital in Bogota and, of course, in Caracas in Venezuela. And Local 10 News reporter Cody Weddle is based in Caracas, and he actually posted video of people evacuating a building there. You're looking at that video recorded on a cell phone as people are going out through the staircase right after that 7.3 magnitude quake hit. He also sent us several photos of people gathered there in the street afterward, after they felt the tremors, what he described on Twitter, and you can see people gathering around, although no damage in this image. Again, the epicenter about 13 miles southwest of Irapa, Venezuela. But I understand Cody is now joining us on the phone, and Cody, we hope you're doing okay. What can you tell us about how things are right now in the capital?
Well, I'm fine, Amy, thanks. I was in my apartment. I just finished my story for you guys for the day, just sitting in a seat, and suddenly it felt like somebody was shaking the seat. I'm from Virginia, so I'm not used to earthquakes, but everybody in the apartment there told me we should evacuate, and that's what people started doing. All around my apartment buildings here, people have evacuated their buildings, and they're continuing to evacuate. So far, nobody has went back in there into their buildings. You were giving me that information. I wasn't aware of where the earthquake was registered. But for now, people just outside their buildings here. There's no obvious damage here in Caracas. It will, of course, be interesting to see if the extent of the damage, where this actually struck, where you were saying. But I can tell you that here we felt what felt like two different tremors. One was stronger, the first one was stronger, and then the second one wasn't quite as strong. But for now, people here just waiting for some sign to go back into the building.
More than 60,000 people living in Japan have been given evacuation advisories as the country is being battered by a powerful typhoon. The center of Typhoon Cimarron was about 200 kilometers south of Shikoku, the smallest of Japan's 4 main islands, and heading north-northwest. It's likely to cut across western Japan on Thursday evening. Once it's hit Japan, it'll sweep over to South Korea Peninsula through Friday with the strongest winds along the coast. Wind gusts could exceed 160 kilometers an hour and flooding's expected. This is how it looks from space above Hawaii. All public schools, the University of Hawaii and non-essential government offices on nearby islands will be closed for at least 2 days because the typhoon is heading towards the state. People have stripped the shelves of a downtown Honolulu Walmart of items ranging from canned tuna to dog food. City residents prepare to make their houses safe as the storm heads their way.
Surrounded by towering flames, Justin Bilton and his father frantically tried to escape.
Dad, this is insane.
I know. We don't want to get trapped in here.
You can hear the panic in Justin's voice as he navigates his car down a narrow mountain trail.
You can't see. Just go easy now. Easy.
Dad, the car is heating up. It's going to explode.
We're all right.
Oh, Jesus, God, help us.
See the flames that big and for that far was absolutely terrifying. It was like it was unearthly. It was like driving into hell.
Bilton says he feared for his life as the dark smoke made seeing the road nearly impossible. A fallen tree blocked their one way out.
Good, you're doing good.
Oh my God. Dad, we can't get out.
Once we got to that downed tree, my heart just dropped, and that's when I thought we were dead. I thought there was no way we could back up through what we had just come through.
Bilton put the car in reverse, driving back to their lakeside campsite where they flagged down a boat. The car was destroyed in the fire.
I just know that we were lucky. It wasn't our time to go yet, so maybe there's some higher power that has a purpose for me and my dad here.
They are lucky to be alive. Both Justin and his father didn't suffer any injuries from the incident. The Howe Ridge fire is still growing and has now burned more than 7,800 acres of land. And fire officials say they don't expect it to be fully contained until November.
Many residents in Shovel Lake, BC left their homes as wildfires threatened the area. However, one man decided to drive his way out through the fire on August 23rd. Guy Smith posted these videos to his Facebook page, documenting the dangerous journey. While we do not recommend this course of action, the video does provide insight into the immensity of the wildfire and the struggles the crews battling the flames are faced with. According to Smith's post, it appeared that the fire managed to jump the road, despite the work fire crews had done keeping such a thing at bay. Comments underneath the post indicate uploader Guy Smith and other residents had been evacuated from the area for some time. However, he said, we came back a few days ago and we could see the glow from my place. One person commenting on the video said, gives me anxiety watching that. Scary business. Evacuation orders have been issued for parts of northern British Columbia. However, the order for the Shovel Lake area was rescinded on the morning of August 23rd.
Hawaii dodged a direct hit by Hurricane Lane, which became Tropical Storm Lane over the weekend. But the Big Island was hit by more than 4 feet of rain. Roads are washed out, homes are damaged, and dozens needed to be rescued. Mireya Villarreal is there.
And I could see the water coming in between the crack and underneath.
Debris heading downstream jammed up this creek, sending floodwaters rushing into Margot Collins' home. Part of her foundation is now gone.
Have you stopped at all to think,
no,
what could have happened?
Not until I started talking about realizing if these doors had not stayed, that I would have been dead.
Stranded Collins had to be rescued Friday morning, along with her neighbors Jill Ann and Brian Bosher.
It was terrifying. Coming out, you underestimate the power of water. To come out and you have your waist deep and you're hanging onto this rope for dear life and your feet are still coming out from underneath you. So it was very scary.
Torrential rain has been relentless for nearly 5 days, dousing the Big Island with more than 51 inches. Downpours flooded out entire neighborhoods and created dangerous road hazards. So far, 39 people have been rescued. As the storm moves out, homeowners are slowly moving back in, determined to rebuild no matter the loss.
I am so fortunate that in Hawaii, if you don't have family here, you make a family. Hanai, aloha.
The Wailuku River behind me is taking all that floodwater out to the Pacific Ocean, but with rain expected to linger for the next few days, crews are working around the clock to make sure that debris doesn't back up.
Okay, we want to go back to our storm coverage now. We showed you a giant sinkhole in upcountry Maui yesterday. Well, we know it stranded some families now in Haiku. Pamela Young tonight reporting from Pu'uwai.
Thanks. We're here in Haiku, and I want to give you an idea of how big this sinkhole is. I'm standing at the very bottom. About 20 feet up is what used to be the center of Pu'uwai. About 50 feet up this way, the street continues, and it goes to 2 residences. The street goes to nowhere. It's a dead end. And then directly behind me is another residence. So essentially 3 residences with about 3 families virtually stuck, trapped and cut off from the outside world by this sinkhole, which, as you can see by the instability of the ground, is in danger of getting even bigger. Are you guys all right? Do you need any food, any medicine, any emergency supplies?
No, we're okay. We just don't have cars. Can't really drive out.
How many are you in the family?
Yeah, we're a family of 7. We have twin babies, 11 months, and then we have a 7-year-old.
The county was out here right away when this thing failed, and they've been here ever since.
How long can you hold out without being able to drive through?
I'm retired. I can hold out probably for another 30 years.
County Public Works Director David Good issued a statement. We plan to fix it as soon as possible and secure some type of access, walking at a minimum first. On Friday, resident Jen Kriska parked her car directly over the sinkhole area. Fortunately, she moved it minutes before. Unfortunately, to the wrong side.
We're, of course, tracking Lane as it continues to push away from the island chain. The storm that brought us, of course, all this extra moisture is still, it looks like the moisture associated with it lingering around the island chain through today. So still a chance of heavy rainfall, slight chance of thunderstorms along Hawaii Island leeward sides and slopes. And we're going to be seeing the threat of heavy showers statewide. And that's really echoed by the National Weather Service, thanks to the fact that that flash flood watch went back into effect. All right, now again, we're seeing Lane keeping things moist, but we're tracking now a couple of other disturbances in the eastern Pacific, 2 of which have now strengthened to tropical cyclones. Now, Miriam, which is in the eastern Pacific, strengthened to a tropical storm a couple of days ago. This one looks like it's going to approach the state and then do a hookup to the north. The one behind it, as of right now, just a tropical depression, but this is looking like it could be approaching the state and making a bit of a closer track towards Hawaii.
An ominous message from the year 1616. The inscription reads, "When you see this, weep." The boulders have reappeared in the river Elbe, which flows through the Czech Republic. The Czechs call them the hunger stones, and the drying river has revealed dozens of them.
In recent years, some of them have been appearing every year. That's since 2015, when we'd had the dry conditions that we've had recently.
Some scientists are linking one of the hottest summers in Europe and an extraordinary heat wave to climate change. But the hunger stones are also reminders that drought isn't a new phenomenon. The German government is promising to compensate thousands of drought-hit farmers. Other farmers in Belgium, Britain, France, the Netherlands, Hungary and Poland are all having their fruit and vegetable production affected, with prices expected to rise.
Regarding our vegetation, we've had a very difficult year. Severe conditions, below average harvests in a lot of regions, and failed harvests. And to describe the situation best, we use this word, given the fact the crop yield this year is 50, 60, 70% lower.
Beyond continental Europe, record temperatures have also been recorded in both North and South America, as well as the Middle East. And drought in Australia means farmers are struggling to keep their cattle alive.
What our challenge is to ensure that until it comes back, that we do everything we can to ensure that these families, that these communities, that these towns get from now until then.
A recent study concluded that 21st century droughts are the most extreme and severe, with global average temperatures expected to rise by 2 degrees or more by the end of the century. Some fear there's worse to come.
BC currently has some of the worst air quality in the entire world due to the more than 400 wildfires that are still burning across the province. Now, we had the chance to speak with some experts to find out how you can protect yourself from the smoke. We are seeing one of the most aggressive wildfire seasons in BC's history, and with all the fires comes a lot of smoke. The smoke has caused plenty of special air quality advisories across most of the province.
I think scientifically this is as bad as it's been in recorded history in Vancouver and surrounding region.
Dr. Donson says he has seen an increase of patients at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver dealing with health issues directly related to the smoke. So what can you do to protect yourself?
The best thing you can do is to keep your indoor environment as clean as possible. Most of us spend the vast majority of our time indoors. The most important technology that we like to talk about is portable air cleaners. They typically use HEPA filtration. They just draw in the air, pass it through a filter that takes all those small particles out and push cleaner air back out into the room.
Staying hydrated during these conditions is also extremely important.
Drink plenty of water to help your body kind of flush out that smoke. Even if you're not thirsty, keep drinking.
And while a healthy adult might experience a sore throat and watery eyes until the smoke clears, she says those with health issues like asthma are most at risk, and it is important for them to carry their life-saving medicine with them at all times.
This is a pope under pressure. In Ireland today, begging forgiveness for the sexual abuse of children by priests and for the cover-up by the church's hierarchy. The crowd here far smaller than the 500,000 organisers predicted. A difficult day began with a former Vatican ambassador to the US accusing the Pope of a cover-up and calling on him to quit. Archbishop Carlo Vigano says Francis knew about allegations of sexual abuse by American Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, but did nothing for 5 years until the Cardinal resigned last month. In a 7,000-word statement published on 2 Catholic news sites, Archbishop Vigano alleged corruption has reached the very top of the Church's hierarchy. The Pope, he said, must set a good example and resign. Vigano is an arch critic of Francis. He offered no evidence. The Pope faced dissent too on Irish streets. An American victim of clerical abuse says he failed to act.
So a missed opportunity by the Pope.
Totally missed opportunity, a completely missed opportunity.
The Pope is leaving Ireland and these protests behind, but not this crisis, which is global and growing. Tonight on his plane, the Pope reacted to his former Vatican official. I won't say a single word about this statement, he said. The Pope, though, did confirm he'd read it. It is perhaps the most public challenge to his leadership yet, and from within.
With the return of U.S. sanctions on Iran, an exodus of flagship Airlinks. On Thursday, Air France announced it would end its service from Paris to Tehran, effective September 18th. The route had reopened in 2016 following the signing of the Iran nuclear deal that brought sanctions relief for the Islamic Republic in return for a drawing down of its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. At the time, the company predicted the service would only continue to grow.
Our primary goal is to raise the number of flights. Soon I would like to have 7 flights a week, a daily flight.
Air France citing low profitability as the cause for the cut. The airline had already transferred its Tehran flights to low-cost subsidiary June, and in early August cut its service from 3 flights per week to just 1. Sister airline KLM had announced in early July that it would end its Tehran service. British Airways also calling an end to its London-Tehran link on Thursday, describing it as not commercially viable. After Donald Trump announced in May that the U.S. would be pulling out of the nuclear deal, the value of the Iranian rial has fallen, reducing the ability of Iranians to travel abroad. Many Western businesses are also abandoning Iran, fearful of secondary sanctions that will cut off access to the U.S. financial system for any company doing business there. On Monday, French oil giant Total became the latest, officially renouncing its multi-billion-dollar gas project in the country.
Russia has announced that it will hold its biggest war games in nearly 4 decades next month. Vostok 2018, as they're called, will take place in military districts in central and eastern Russia and will also involve the militaries of China and Mongolia. 300,000 troops, 1,000 military aircraft, 2 of Russia's naval fleets and all its airborne units will take part. These are the largest military exercises since the Zapad 81 maneuvers. They have the status of international drills and are unprecedented in scale in terms of territory, as well as the number of command structures and troops. They're likely to upset Japan, which has already complained about what it says is a Russian military build-up in the Far East. NATO spokesman Dylan White said that Russia had briefed the alliance on the exercise and that NATO plans to monitor it.
The exodus of migrants from Venezuela is building toward a crisis moment comparable to events involving refugees in the Mediterranean. That's according to the United Nations Migration Agency. It comes as desperate Venezuelan migrants breathed a sigh of relief as they reached Peru's border before the tightened controls came into effect on Saturday, preventing those not carrying passports from entering. Part of me feels calm, but I'm also worried about my fellow Venezuelans. In our country, it's really hard to get a passport. Tens of thousands of Venezuelans are fleeing to many countries in overwhelming numbers because of the high inflation nearly reaching 1,000,000%, creating chronic food and medicine shortages. Venezuela's information minister says he thinks people will return, but with a worthless currency and no plan for economic reform, it seems hard to think people will go back anytime soon.
The UN says military commanders in Myanmar should be prosecuted for genocide against the Rohingya. Following their recent fact-finding mission on Myanmar, 3 investigators presented their report in Geneva on Monday. Included among the findings that Myanmar's armed forces, also known as the Tatmadaw, took action that, in the words of the UN investigators, undoubtedly amount to the gravest crimes under international law.
The mission has concluded that criminal investigation and prosecution is warranted, focusing on the top Tatmadaw generals in relation to the 3 categories of crimes under international law: genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes.
After attacks by Rohingya gunmen in Rakhine State a year ago, government forces began a crackdown against the Rohingya. The UN says reports of up to 10,000 Rohingya killed are a conservative estimate. Around 750,000 of the Muslim minority fled to neighboring Bangladesh. Many live here in Kutupalong camp, the largest refugee settlement in the world. The report from UN investigators includes accounts of numerous atrocities, including gang rape, enslavement, and the killing of children.
The Rohingya, who are among the most persecuted minorities in the world, have faced decades of persecution. And sadly, they've grown accustomed to the international community ignoring their plight.
Reacting to the investigators' findings, Rohingya rights activist Shekufa says she's cautiously optimistic but wants action.
It's been a year now since we fled Rakhine. So many international organisations have come here, but we haven't seen any solutions. All of us Rohingya women have been wondering how much time we will have to live inside a refugee camp. That's one of the reasons so many women went out to demonstrate on Saturday.
Those large protests show the Rohingya are growing tired of waiting for the world to act. They mourned the first-year anniversary of the beginning of the violence in Rakhine State, or as the Rohingya demonstrators called it, Genocide Remembrance Day.
Around 2,000 far-right protesters took to the streets of Chemnitz in eastern Germany for a second night on Monday. The far-right Pegida movement organised the protests after the police arrested a Syrian man and an Iraqi man for allegedly stabbing a German man to death early on Sunday. Such routes, such hunts for people who look different, are of different origin, or the attempt to spread hate in the streets will not accept this. This doesn't have a place here in our cities, and I can say from the government that we condemn this in the strongest terms. Hundreds of leftist protesters also rallied near the far-right protesters, but no clashes were reported. Chemnitz used to be a part of communist East Germany when it was called Karl-Marx-Stadt. In videos on social media, some protesters were heard chanting, "We are the people," the same chant used by anti-government protesters in communist times. Meanwhile, mourners lay wreaths at the spot where the German man, a 35-year-old carpenter, died.
The United States is cutting over $200 million in aid to Gaza and the West Bank. The State Department said the decision came after a review to ensure that assistance is spent in accordance with US national interests. Recent months have seen tensions remain high in Gaza, with regular protests at the fence with Israel often turning violent. The Palestinian leadership has boycotted US peace efforts ever since President Trump decided to recognise Jerusalem as Israel's capital city. He moved the American embassy there, reversing decades of US policy in the region. In January, Washington withheld more than half of $125 million promised to the UN Relief and Works Agency, which supports some 5 million Palestinian refugees. The UN says withholding aid exacerbates economic hardship. The Palestinian Liberation Organization accused the Trump administration of using cheap blackmail as a political tool.
It's dangerous if you're pointing a fucking gun at us. Ow! Yes.
I still cannot believe that they shot me when I had my hands up and clearly posing no threats. And I have it on video.
Yeah.
I'm hoping maybe my case can get people to open their eyes to what's actually happening here in Palestine. Because now I'm talking to you, I'm talking to lots of media, but the Palestinians, they don't get any attention whatsoever, and the stuff that happens to them is a million times worse than what happened to me.